Before we dive into this one, do yourself a favor and smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a Blue Jays breakdown. We are building something special here and you do not want to be left out. Now let's get into it because folks, what is happening in Toronto right now is absolutely wild. In February of this year, the Toronto Blue Jays quietly swapped outfielder Joey Loperfido to the Houston Astros in exchange for a guy named Jesus Sanchez. No parade. No press conference. No one trending on social media. Most fans shrugged their shoulders and scrolled right past it. Analysts called it a depth move. A low-risk, low-reward shuffle between two teams trying to figure things out before spring training even got started. And honestly, you cannot really blame anyone for sleeping on it. Jesus Sanchez was coming off a rough stretch. He slashed a brutal .199 average with a 71 WRC+ across 160 plate appearances in Houston, numbers so bad they made your eyes water. The guy looked cooked. A cautionary tale. Another bat with raw tools and no results. The Astros essentially paid to get rid of him, saving themselves his $6.8 million salary. The Blue Jays, already positioned as a luxury taxpayer in the top penalty tier, had to take on that full contract plus a 90% tax on top of it. A heavy financial commitment to buy low on a guy most of baseball had quietly given up on. And yet here we are, barely 10 games into the 2026 season, and Jesus Sanchez is not just surviving in Toronto. He is absolutely cooking. And the numbers are not just good, they are screaming at us, begging for our attention. Buckle up, because what this man is doing at the plate right now is one of the most compelling early season stories in all of baseball, and it just so happens to be wearing a Blue Jays uniform. Let's start with the surface level stuff, because even that is impressive on its own. Sanchez is currently batting .281 with an on-base percentage of .361, a slugging percentage of .438, and an OPS of .799. Now before you shrug and say that is decent but not earth-shattering, stay with me, because that OPS number is already trending upward and the underlying numbers suggest the surface stats are actually underselling him right now. He is producing despite the fact that baseball can be a fickle, random, cruel game over a small sample. When the underlying metrics come out looking like they do for Sanchez right now, that is not noise. That is signal. That is a hitter locked in and doing real damage. Because here is where it gets genuinely exciting. His expected weighted on-base average sits in the 91st percentile of all of Major League Baseball. His expected batting average is in the 95th percentile. His expected slugging is in the 87th percentile. For those who do not spend their evenings drowning in StatCast data, what those numbers are telling you is this: the quality of contact Jesus Sanchez is making right now is among the best in the entire sport. He is not getting lucky with bloop singles and seeing eye grounders. He is absolutely mashing the baseball, and the math is screaming that his actual stats should look even better than they already do. When a player's expected numbers are consistently outrunning his real numbers, it generally means one thing: the hits are coming. The results are lagging behind the talent. And for a guy who is already batting .281, that is a genuinely terrifying thought for opposing pitchers. But maybe the single most jaw-dropping number in the entire Jesus Sanchez story right now is his launch angle sweet spot percentage, which has been tracking as high as the 99th percentile at 52.4%. For context on why this number matters so much, let's break it down simply. Launch angle sweet spot measures whether the ball is leaving your bat at the right angle, not too low where you are beating balls into the ground for easy outs, and not too high where you are popping up for lazy fly balls. It is the Goldilocks zone of contact. The angle where line drives and hard-hit balls in the gap happen. The angle where doubles, home runs, and extra base hits are born. And Sanchez is operating at that angle at one of the highest rates in the entire league. Now here is the twist that makes this story even more remarkable. Last year, Jesus Sanchez ranked in the 10th percentile in launch angle sweet spot. The absolute bottom of the barrel. That is a staggering transformation. We are talking about a player who went from being in the bottom 10% of the entire sport in one of the most critical contact quality metrics, to sitting comfortably near the very top of the leaderboard in 2026. That is not a random blip. That is not variance. That is a real, intentional mechanical change in how this man is approaching his swing, and it is paying off in a massive way. And speaking of intentional changes, let's talk about the approach adjustment that has quietly been the engine behind all of this. The old Jesus Sanchez had a reputation for being a pull-heavy hitter. For those who do not follow the analytics side closely, a pull-heavy approach in today's game is something opposing pitchers and defensive coordinators absolutely salivate over. If they know you are going to yank everything to one side of the field, they can position their defense and attack you in specific spots, over and over again, until you crack. It makes you predictable. It makes you exploitable. And for a guy with Sanchez's raw power, being predictable is the fastest way to make sure that power never fully translates into results. The new Jesus Sanchez is different. He has ditched the pull-heavy tendencies and replaced them with what coaches describe as a gap-to-gap approach. He is using the whole field. He is going up the middle. He is taking pitches the other way when the situation calls for it. He is forcing defenders to cover ground they were not positioned to cover. And most importantly, he is creating a version of himself at the plate that pitchers simply cannot game plan against as effectively. When a hitter can genuinely go anywhere on the field with authority, he becomes a different kind of threat. He stops being a platoon bat. He becomes an everyday lineup piece. He becomes someone you cannot simply neutralize with a defensive shift or an attack plan built around one glaring weakness. To see this approach come to life in real time, look no further than his at-bat against Yoshinobu Yamamoto, one of the best pitchers on the planet. Yamamoto came into this at-bat with a clear game plan. Attack the inner half of the plate with high fastballs. Classic strategy against a pull hitter. Get him reaching, get him uncomfortable, get him off balance and out in front. On the first pitch, Sanchez fouls it off. High heater inside, exactly as expected. Second pitch, another fastball inside, but this one is a touch too far in and Sanchez has the discipline to lay off it for a ball. Third pitch, Yamamoto misses his spot and Sanchez takes it again, working the count to 2-1. Fourth pitch, another high inside heater, same pitch, same location, and Sanchez lays it off once more to make it 3-1. This is where a lot of hitters in Sanchez's old mold might have gotten themselves into trouble, either chasing early or failing to adjust when the pitcher kept coming back to the same spot. But Sanchez was reading the at-bat. He was watching. He was learning. Fifth pitch, Yamamoto takes a little off it and comes inside again, and Sanchez fouls it off, running the count full. Now here is where it gets beautiful. Yamamoto throws the exact same pitch in the exact same spot one more time, because in his mind, this is still a weakness he can exploit. But Sanchez had already made his adjustment. He had already decided that if Yamamoto came back to that inside location, he was going to turn on it with full authority. And that is exactly what he did, driving it over Tucker's head for a double. What that at-bat illustrates is not just raw talent. Raw talent is the guy who swings at 3 straight inner half fastballs and maybe gets lucky on one of them. What Sanchez showed against Yamamoto was the ability to recognize a pattern within a single at-bat, make a mechanical adjustment on the fly, and execute that adjustment against one of baseball's most dominant arms. That is a level of hitting intelligence that elevates a player from potential to consistent performance. And for Blue Jays fans who have spent years watching this organization try to find a true protection bat for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., that kind of disciplined, adaptable hitting is exactly what has been missing from this lineup. Which brings us to the bigger picture, because this story is not just about Jesus Sanchez having a hot 10 games. It is about what his emergence could mean for this entire Blue Jays lineup going forward. The biggest question mark hanging over this roster heading into 2026 was who was going to protect Vladdy. Bo Bichette is gone. Anthony Santander missed most of last season due to injury and is still working his way back. The lineup desperately needed someone in the cleanup spot who opposing pitchers had to genuinely respect. Someone who forces them to throw strikes to Guerrero instead of pitching around him all night. And right now, in the early going of 2026, Jesus Sanchez is making the loudest and most convincing argument for that role. He is batting 4th or 5th in the order, he has been producing when it matters, and his underlying numbers suggest there is significantly more production on the way. Manager John Schneider has already noted publicly that he loves the work Sanchez has been doing, And there is even legitimate conversation happening around whether he should be batting as high as second in the lineup given how locked in he currently looks. His OPS plus is sitting at 133 through this early stretch, which signals he is providing offensive production well above the league average mark. That is not a platoon bat. That is a legitimate middle-of-the-order threat. There is also the lineup construction piece that makes Sanchez uniquely valuable for Schneider and the Blue Jays. Sanchez is a left-handed hitter, which means he naturally creates that coveted left-right-left dynamic in the batting order when slotted behind Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That alternation makes it significantly harder for opposing managers to deploy their bullpen, because they cannot simply bring in a left-handed specialist to neutralize back-to-back same-handed hitters. It keeps the lineup balanced. It creates matchup headaches from the third inning all the way to the ninth. It is the kind of structural lineup flexibility that wins ball games in October, and if the Blue Jays are serious about building on their World Series appearance in 2025 and making another deep run this season, those kinds of advantages matter enormously. Now let's talk about the man pulling the strings behind this transformation, because you absolutely cannot tell the Jesus Sanchez story in 2026 without talking about hitting coach David Popkins. If you have been following the Blue Jays over the last year, you already know the name. Popkins joined the organization ahead of the 2025 season and immediately turned the lineup inside out in the best possible way.